Sarah met John at a friend's party. It was one of those nights where the air was filled with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses. The atmosphere was electric, and Sarah felt a sense of excitement as she mingled with the crowd. He was charming, attentive, and seemed deeply interested in everything she said. As they talked, Sarah felt an instant connection, something she hadn't felt in a long time. John had a way of making her feel like she was the only person in the room. John showered Sarah with compliments. He told her how beautiful she looked, how her smile lit up the room, and how he couldn't take his eyes off her. His words were like a soothing balm to her soul, making her feel special and appreciated. "You're the most fascinating woman I've ever met," he whispered softly in her ear. His voice was gentle yet filled with sincerity. Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine as she listened to his words. "I feel like I've known you my entire life," he said, holding her hand and looking deeply into her eyes. There was a sense of familiarity and comfort that made Sarah's heart swell with emotion. His words made Sarah feel special, like she was floating on air. She couldn't remember the last time someone had made her feel this way. It was as if she was living in a dream and she didn't want to wake up. They started spending almost every moment together. From morning coffee dates to late-night walks under the stars, their days were filled with laughter, joy, and endless conversations. They explored new places, tried new things, and created beautiful memories together. John would surprise her with flowers and gifts. He knew exactly what she liked and always managed to find the perfect way to make her smile. Whether it was a bouquet of her favorite flowers or a small, thoughtful gift, his gestures were always filled with love and care. He planned romantic getaways and introduced her to all his friends as the one. They went on weekend trips to beautiful destinations where they could escape the hustle and bustle of everyday life and just enjoy each other's company. His friends welcomed her with open arms, and she felt like she was part of his world. Sarah had never felt so loved and cherished. Every moment with John was like a page out of a fairy tale. He made her feel like the most important person in the world, and she couldn't help but fall deeper in love with him. It was like a fairy tale. Their love story was filled with magical moments, and Sarah often found herself daydreaming about their future together. She imagined a life filled with love, happiness, and endless adventures. She thought she had found her soulmate. John was everything she had ever dreamed of and more. He was her confidant, her partner, and her best friend. Sarah felt like she was on top of the world, and she couldn't wait to see what the future held for them. John's intense affection at the beginning of their relationship was like a drug. He called it love at first sight, a bond too special to be denied. He told Sarah she was his everything. He needed to be with her constantly. The constant attention was overwhelming at times, but Sarah dismissed the thought. No one had ever loved her like this before. She thought she had found a rare and precious love. She fell hard and fast. Beneath the surface of John's charm lurked something darker. His smile could light up a room, but behind that facade was a man who thrived on control and manipulation. At first, his charm was disarming, making everyone around him feel special and valued. But as time went on, the cracks in his mask began to show. His need for control became more apparent as the weeks passed. He started to dictate how Sarah should spend her time, who she could see, and even what she should wear. The once loving and attentive boyfriend turned into a domineering figure, always watching, always judging. He'd get angry if Sarah spent time with her friends. His jealousy knew no bounds, and he would often accuse her of not caring about him enough. The arguments became more frequent and his anger more intense. Sarah found herself walking on eggshells, trying to avoid anything that might set him off. He criticized her clothes, her opinions, even her taste in music. Nothing she did was ever good enough for him. He belittled her choices, making her feel small and insignificant. The things she once loved became sources of contention, and she started to doubt her own worth. Sarah tried to brush it off. She told herself that he was just passionate and that his intensity was a sign of his love. She made excuses for his behavior, convincing herself that things would get better. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. She blamed his outbursts on his passionate personality. She remembered the good times, the moments when he was sweet and caring. She clung to those memories, hoping they would return, but the good moments became fewer and farther between, overshadowed by his controlling nature. She convinced herself that his jealousy was just a sign of his deep love for her. She thought that if she could just prove her loyalty, he would trust her more. She tried harder to please him, to avoid conflict, but nothing seemed to work. His demands grew and her sense of self diminished. She didn't want to see the red flags waving in front of her. She ignored the warnings from friends and family, choosing to believe in the man she fell in love with. But the truth was undeniable. The man behind the mask was not the man she thought he was, and the cost of her denial was her own happiness and peace of mind. One evening, Sarah was running late to meet John for dinner. Her phone was dead, so she couldn't call to explain. When she arrived, he was furious. He stormed out of the restaurant, ignoring her apologies and pleas for him to stay. The next morning, Sarah discovered that John had blocked her on every platform. Her calls went straight to voicemail. Her texts wouldn't deliver. She was completely shut out, left reeling in confusion and hurt. What had she done? The sudden shift from intense love to complete silence is a classic tactic used by narcissists. This emotional roller coaster is designed to keep their victims off balance and constantly seeking approval. The highs are incredibly high, filled with affection, gifts, and attention, making the lows even more devastating. Let's take the example of another woman, Mary. Mary was a vibrant, independent woman before she met Tom. She had a fulfilling job, a close-knit group of friends, and hobbies she loved. But all that changed when Tom entered her life. She experienced a similar pattern with her ex-boyfriend, Tom. At first, Tom seemed like the perfect partner. He was charming, attentive, and seemed genuinely interested in her well-being. But soon the cracks began to show. Tom showered her with gifts and affection, but only when she was completely under his thumb. He would surprise her with lavish presents and romantic gestures, but these were always followed by periods of emotional withdrawal. If Mary expressed her own needs or disagreed with him, Tom would disappear. He would ignore her calls and messages, leaving her in a state of confusion and distress. This silent treatment was his way of punishing her for stepping out of line. He'd ghost her for days, leaving her anxious and desperate for his attention. Mary would spend hours checking her phone, hoping for a message, an explanation, anything to break the silence. The longer the silence lasted, the more desperate she became. He'd then reappear, acting like nothing had happened, and the cycle would repeat. Tom would come back into her life with a casual demeanor, as if his disappearance was no big deal. He would charm her again, making her feel special and loved, only to pull away once more. This is how he maintained power and control in the relationship. By keeping Mary in a constant state of emotional turmoil, he ensured that she was always focused on him, always trying to win back his affection. This power play is a hallmark of narcissistic abuse, leaving the victim feeling powerless and trapped. Love bombing is a form of manipulation, a tactic used to gain control. It often precedes a pattern of emotional abuse. Narcissists crave admiration and lack empathy. They use people to fuel their own ego. Learning to recognize the warning signs is crucial. Pay attention to inconsistencies between someone's words and actions. Are they overly possessive? Do they disrespect your boundaries? Do they lack empathy? Trust your gut instincts always. If you find yourself in a situation like Sarah or Mary's, remember, you are not alone. The most important thing is to prioritize your own well-being. Don't blame yourself for their behavior. Recognize that you were targeted because of your kind and loving nature. Educate yourself on narcissistic personality disorder. Seek support from friends, family, or a therapist. Learn to set healthy boundaries and enforce them. Remember, you deserve to be in a relationship built on mutual respect, trust, and genuine affection.